Should the Saints move on from quarterback Derek Carr in favor of Spencer Rattler? Ladies and gentlemen, today the backdrop off the bench. T-Bob, Jacob Hester, the question. To Carr or not to Carr? That is the question. This is going to be the decision point for most of the offseason. This is right up there with who is going to be the next head coach, whether it's a new head coach or Darren Rizzi or who knows. But the decision of what do you do with Derek Carr versus Spencer Rattler? It is a complex situation. It isn't really about who's the better quarterback, as crazy as that sounds. Like, Derek Carr is obviously the better quarterback. But when you factor in age, when you factor in contracts, when you factor in the window for the team, when you factor in all of that, it starts to get a little more even, right? When you start to factor in, like, well, does $50 million versus a fifth-round rookie contract, does that matter? Does guaranteeing yourself somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 9 wins, does that really matter? Like, all of a sudden, there's a lot of questions that have to be raised. And it's really to no fault of Carr. Like, nothing to do with Carr. It's more about the contract. It's more about the timing. It's more about the window. It's more about all of that. You know, like, I've seen a lot of people saying, well, Derek Carr threw for 270 yards and the Saints won however many games with Derek Carr. They haven't won any games without Derek Carr. Sadly, for Derek Carr backers here, that's really not a huge part of this conversation. The big part of the conversation is the path forward to a pseudo rebuild and maneuvering money and lining up that money with a window. And a lot of that, it does look pretty good when your quarterback is a fifth-round rookie on that kind of contract. So a lot of this conversation will be taking place in the financial sector, but in this sector, with the face of the franchise, we're going to talk about it right here with T-Bob and Jacob leading the way.
Saints-Bucks yesterday. Saints come out and really control the game the entirety of the first half.
Dominated.
You could tell they were giving the Tampa fans the heebie-jeebies a bit.
I hate to stop it already, but just thought of another point. This isn't like we're talking about Aiden O'Connell. You know, like, this is a guy who, when you watch the first half against the Bucks, you're sitting there looking at Spencer Rattler like, well, damn, there's something here. You know, like, there's something. He might not be ready. He might not be Jaden Daniels or Bo Nix or whatever, but you see that and you're like, there's something to unlock. Like, this is not just, well, roll out, you know, Davis Mills. Like, just roll out whoever. We know he sucks. We know, you know, who cares? Just roll him out there. This isn't that. This is like, you know, wait a minute. He might have something. He might have some serious potential here.
The announcers kept talking about it in the booth, but you could feel the tension building as the Bucks know the entire season comes down to this: win and you win the division and you're in, lose and you're out. And for much of the first half, Baker Mayfield and that offense could not see the field.
Yeah, they had to win because Atlanta had no problem with the Carolina Panthers. I mean, it is the Panthers. Oh, wait a minute.
Put together extended drive after extended
LUL.
drive. Unfortunately, as is generally the case in the NFL, the better team ended up taking over the game by game's end. Whatever the offense had in the first half completely disappeared in the second, and Baker Mayfield, who is a gamer, found a way once again to win. So the Bucks win. Mike Evans sets a pretty impressive record, and the Saints season comes to a merciful end. I mean, honestly, you know, it's probably the happiest you will ever be after a loss, especially a loss to a rival, because it kept the Falcons out of the playoff, and a win just would have hurt draft stock, unfortunately, at the end of the day. So the result maybe not as interesting as what comes next, and maybe like what you think about Spencer Rattler.
I think Week 18 was a good example of the difference between fans and players. So leading up to Week 18, you saw a lot of fans and analysts, a lot of analysts say, well, this team doesn't care. Well, this team has nothing to play for. Well, this team does this. And then you watch these players and you're like, damn, Joe Milton is playing really hard. I try to say this and I try to explain it. tanking is not a thing. Like, tanking is a thing that you think about in your head because you're not on the field. Like, Joe Milton for the Patriots, he doesn't care about getting a high draft pick. He doesn't want the Patriots. Well, the Patriots are a little different because they have Drake May. But, like, let's just say the Patriots didn't have Drake May. Joe Milton does not want the Patriots to get the first overall pick to get Shedeur Sanders. That is negatively impacting his career, right? Gerard Mayo, if he's told, hey, man, you're out of here, why the hell does he care about the first overall pick? Most of the people on the field in Week 18 are playing for their livelihood. Just because Twitter pros and Twitter fans say, well, the Jets are going to lay down, the Jets don't need to win, the Jets don't care, the Jets don't do this. Tell that to the players on the field. Tell that to the players chasing incentives, contracts, chasing their next contract, trying to put together game tape to get another contract with a different team. Tell that to the coaches who are trying to get extensions or jobs or whatever. Like, this idea that teams are laying down or tanking or players, it's just proven time and time and time and time again that is just not the case. And I can promise you, there isn't a single Saints player or coach on that team that was thinking, I want to lose this game to bolster my draft stock. I guarantee you that. I guarantee you there wasn't a single player in uniform or a single coach on the sideline that was rooting for or trying to or hoping they would lose. Guarantee it. That is one of the most misunderstood and overhyped narratives, is the team should lose to boost draft stock, so they'll lose.
So I wonder, like, watching this game, and Spencer Rattler did a nice job of getting the tight ends involved. He got the running backs involved in the pass game, and Juwan Johnson, Foster had some big plays in the game, and you wonder if he had NFL receivers, like what he could have done. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the guys there, but it's got.
I will, if you don't want to. Respect. They're not NFL level receivers. Kevin Austin Jr., Mason Tipton, Bub Means. James, they weren't in the game. Bub Means and Mason Tipton were Spencer Rattler's number 1 and number 2 receivers at one point this year. Spencer Rattler has dealt with a crazy combination of who's on the field. Whether it was Kendra Miller, whether it was CEH, whether it was Connor McGovern, whether it was Bub Means, whether it was Mason Tipton, whether it was, whoever. Okay? I've said this a zillion times. In certain positions, he had better talent at South Carolina. Okay? A lot of the Saints' issues offensively is that when they have to get a first down, when they have to run the football and control the clock, when they have to convert a 3rd and 6 or a 3rd and 7, they flat out can't. Because on the second half, it's like, hey, we need to control the clock and run the football. Okay, well, we have Kendra Miller and Jamal Williams. Okay, well, that's not going to work. Hey, we need to convert this 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7. Okay, well, Kevin Austin and Mason Tipton and MVS are 1, 2, and 3. Okay, well, that's not going to work. And that's how drives stall out. Like, that's how drives don't work out. And like, when you look at, I know I keep picking on the Raiders here, but think about how much better Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer are than anyone on the Saints team. Think about how much better Jacoby Myers is. Like, Brock Bowers is a generational talent, but Michael Mayer would be, Todd Heap. That was a deep tight end pull there. But just having a player like that on 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5 would help the Saints so much. You look at some of the running backs in the NFL, and you look at Jamal Williams having 1.7 yards a carry. It's just not going to happen. So when you look at what Rattler did in that first half, and he's done it in different spots during his tenure, you do kind of have to wonder, like, man, what if he was thrown to Chris Olave? What if Alvin Kamara was on the field? What if Olave was on the field? What if Shaheed's on the field? What if all this stuff is in place? But then you kind of trickle down a little further and you say, well, what if Clint Kubiak was allowed to kind of build this thing for another year? And then you go even further. And you say, well, Darren Rizzi, he really kind of got dealt a bad hand. The locker room is behind him. He had the team playing hard. And then you look at it, and it's like, for a team that seemingly you need to turn everything over, there's a whole lot of questions present itself of, should any of that be turned over? You know, like, if you went into next season, now we're kind of going on a rant here. If you went into next season, and I told you it's Spencer Rattler, Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Clint Kubiak, Darren Rizzi, I'm just going to make something up, Robert Salah is the DC, and you have the 9th overall pick that you use on the defensive tackle from Michigan. Please, God, please. Cam Skadaboo is your backup running back. All of a sudden now it's like, well, all right.
Guys off the street. That's what it, I mean, literally, like, there's players that hadn't played in the NFL since 2022 that are out there running routes. And look, they made a couple of plays here and there, but I wonder what Spencer Rattler would have been like if he had Chris Olave, if he had Rashid Shaheed in this game, because as the games continue to go for him, he did start to understand, okay, if it's not there, hit your check down. If it's not there, find the intermediate stuff. And it's going to be tough to kind of grade him this season in his rookie year. And certainly now that all these rookies across the NFL, Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels and Michael Penix Jr. are just lighting it up. And so you're going to compare Spencer Rattler to that, even though he was a 5th-round pick. Those guys are top 10, top 12 picks.
I said this when Rattler got drafted. You can go back. We did a million videos. Bo Nix was the last quarterback taken in the first round. I think he was the 6th quarterback taken. Rattler was the 7th quarterback taken. And at the time, I said, there is not 5 rounds of difference in Bo Nix and Spencer Rattler. If you look at right now, I know they have a whole lot more game and a whole lot more experience and a whole lot better rosters and a whole lot better coaches. But if you look at Michael Penix, Bo Nix, you look at some of those guys, even Caleb Williams, there is not 5 rounds of difference between them and Spencer Rattler. Again, they have had so much more time. They have had, I mean, look at Caleb Williams. Like, think about DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Swift. Like, think about some of those players that he's got. You know, like, you look at Michael Penix, you look at Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier would be the best player by far on the Saints offense. You know, Kyle Pitts is ass, no doubt about it. Drake London, like some of these players that Michael Penix has. Rattler is not that far away from that group. I'm not saying he is Bo Nix. I'm not saying he is Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams. I'm just saying he's not 5 rounds apart. He is in that same conversation.
But there's something there. But see, I wonder if it's going to be enough. How are they going to grade him? How are they going to view his progress, knowing he's throwing to a Cedric Wilson Jr., a Dante Pettis, a Kevin Austin Jr.? Like, how is that going to be graded? And what do they think of him inside that building? Because right now, as you sit, you're in the top 10. What does this quarterback class look like? And are you
the drafting a quarterback? I just went full Elmer Fudd there. The drafting a quarterback is not an option. Quarterback class is not good enough. You're going to get Shedeur and Cam Ward forced into the top 5, which I think will be probably a mistake. We're already hearing that Shedeur Sanders does not have first round grade by multiple draft experts, and he's considered the best in the class. So, tough spot. So you take those 2 out of the equation because they're not slipping to 9, obviously. You're definitely not taking a quarterback at 9. From everything I can see in my giant brain, you have to go, hopefully you go defensive lineman, whether it's Abdul Carter, whether it's is it Mason Graham? Is that his name? From Michigan? Something like that. Whether it's one of those guys, you got to, that's where you're going to go in the draft. Drafting a quarterback is not an option.
You going to be able to get a quarterback at 9 that you think can be the future of your team because of where you're at in the cap. You still have Derek Carr's contract. I don't know that you can do anything else outside of drafting a quarterback if you want a new quarterback.
Yeah, not a great year for quarterbacks, or at least it doesn't feel that way.
Feel like it.
Looking at it, and you never know with quarterbacks.
It's top heavy. I mean, even if you like Sanders and Ward, okay, fine. Well, they're going top 3. They're both going top 3, top 5. So eliminate them as far as like Saints. It's not going to work out. So the Saints are not in it. They're in like no man's land when it comes to drafting a quarterback. Now, you could argue like, oh, this guy in the 4th round, like he might be like, but you're not going to draft him to start him. If you're drafting him, you're going to end up playing Rattler anyways, right? So, I don't think that kind of lends itself to Rattler too. Like that whole idea of, well, we can't really do much else. We are in kind of this like no man's land. We do have an opportunity to figure out this cap situation. We do have a lot of contracts coming off of the books over the next 2 years. What would really help that is a cheap quarterback contract. And then you do have the potential upside of, damn, well, maybe there is something here.
Actually, that's kind of the tricky part about the draft, is that guys that are for sure hits go bust. And I mean, you know who I keep thinking of? Bryce Young. How in the world are you supposed to evaluate quarterbacks when Bryce Young exists? Because, of course, he was put into awful situations at first, and that didn't help anything. It made him look awful. But then he was benched earlier this year for Andy Dalton, looked truly awful. Remember the first Saints-Panthers game? He did not look like he could play in this league. Well, yesterday, I think he has the highest EPA per dropback of any quarterback in the NFL.
Yep.
Like the Panthers got consistently better as the weeks went on. After he got done with being benched and he got back in the starting lineup, Bryce Young started to dominate. So I don't know who's going to be good. I have no.
Those are variables that, and the book is still out on Bryce Young and a lot of these other players, but I mean, we've seen players heat up at the end of the year, then go cold again, vice versa, go cold, then heat up. Those kind of variables, it's all up to the organization. Like benching Young was obviously the right decision. Having Andy Dalton there, to whether he was mentoring him or whether he was just showing him how to do it whenever Dalton did play, and Young learned something. Bryce Young right now is a completely different player than he was for the first 1.5 years of his career. But it took Carolina to get Canales, who seemingly is working wonders for Bryce Young. It took the benching. It took Dalton. Like, those are the decision points that some franchises never get to. Some franchises get to, like Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis. Anthony Richardson obviously needed to be benched. He's not good enough right now. So they bench him for Flacco. For some reason, they end up going back to Richardson. Seems to have flipped the locker room all around. Like they're an example of a team that handled it incorrectly. And we're seeing Richardson go backwards even more. And we're hearing now about all kind of infighting in the Colts locker room or whatever. So you can draft a player for who you think they're going to be. But once you get the player in the building, all that, like, we think they're this or they can become this, that's over. There's no more thinking. You have to actually do it. And it's up to the franchise to put that into motion. And if you throw a quarterback out there that, like Bryce Young, if they never benched Bryce Young, he may have got so carved up by now. He may have been so dejected by now. He may have been so turned on by now by the locker room that he may never have a chance, ever. Sam Darnold, got chewed up, spit out. Now he's in Minnesota, looks good. Last night, he looked horrible. Maybe the second worst game he's played as far as like overthrows and all that. So what happens now? Does KOC somehow figure out Darnold and get Darnold back on track? Or does Minnesota and Sam Darnold go to Los Angeles, get rolled on by the Rams, and Sam Darnold floats off into free agency because his last 2 games were a disaster and all of that goodwill goes away? And how does the franchise handle that? Do they say, thanks for the memory, Sam, but see you later? And then they go with J.J. McCarthy, and Sam Darnold ends up going to wherever, and then who knows what situation he falls into? A lot of variables when it comes to draft picks and quarterbacks and careers.
No idea how to evaluate. Sometimes we think you're awful, and then you get good. Look at Sam Darnold.
Caleb Williams. First 2 games, worst 2 games a rookie has played. Then he's good. Then he's bad. then he's good. Then he's bad and good in the same game. He's awful in Green Bay for 90% of the game, and then he's the best player ever. Like, there are ups and downs with young players and young quarterbacks. You see it in college. There are certain games where Garrett Nussmeier looks like a Heisman winner, and there are certain games where it's like they might need to bench him.
What's going on there?
You're right. I mean, in a winner-take-all, like, if they lose this game, and the Falcons are going to playoffs, and so like the Falcons had to win this game, so they were giving Bryce Young every single thing that he could handle, and he puts up 44 points.
Yeah.
Goes for 251 and 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, and so to your point, that is somebody we all like. There's,
I mean, and it's a shame the Falcons don't have a defensive-minded head coach.
Memes, there's jokes, there's everything. It's like, well, actually, he's pretty damn good.
I know. I mean, the little kid, he looks so tiny out there, and now he's kicking ass. So, because when I look at Rattler's play yesterday, you see the potential. There were some mind-blowing accurate throws in there, but then there were also some very frustrating easy throws missed that ended up costing you a bit. So, I mean, you know what? Honestly, I thought the best throw of the day was the second MVS.
The best throw of the day, I think it might have been Juwan. It was like a crossing route. It was either Juwan or MVS. It was a crossing route. Rattler throws it across the field over the hands of the linebacker. Like, I mean, if the hands are right here, the ball went right over the linebacker's hands into the receiver's hands. That was by far the best throw of the day.
Yes, touchdown that didn't count where MVS only got one.
I mean, that was a good throw, but that was not. I mean, he just dropped that one in the bucket. I could do that no problem. 30 yards in, again, multiple flag football, 3-on-3 flag football championships. Did not throw an interception the entire season. Absolutely lit it up from 20, 25 yards in. I'm absolutely lethal. I could have made that throw. But the other throw that Rattler made that I'm talking about, insanity.
1 foot inbounds, but the window that he put it in is true NFL, 6-inch target type of situation. So what do you do next year? Do you cut Derek Carr, eat the cap hit, ride Rattler for a year and just see what happens? I mean, it's definitely a recipe for a bad year, but you're going to have a bad year anyway, in all likelihood, unless you get some sort of miracle turnaround, which I don't know how that would take place. Has Rattler done enough where you try to give him a young-like year, a new coach, and see if he can figure out what he could maybe do, or is Derek Carr going to be your quarterback again?
I think whoever you hire,
doesn't matter.
Yeah, whoever you hire.
That's where you go.
I think most of us believe, unless it's Aaron Glenn, it's going to be an offensive-minded head coach. So if it is, he gets the choice. Do you want to roll out Derek Carr? Do you want Spencer Rattler? Or should we draft a quarterback? And no, if we draft a quarterback, you're going to be tied to him. And if it doesn't turn out well, you're not going to turn out well.
I don't think drafting is possible. Oh, wow. Okay, the video's over. I do agree. I'm not going to lie, guys. Like, I'm filming this on a Monday. I'm kind of thinking Darren Rizzi is live for this job. I don't think it's as finito that he's out. I'm not saying he should get it or whatever. I'm just saying I think there's a good chance. And if you're looking at Matt Nagy, if you're looking at Mike McCarthy, if you're looking at Brian Shaw, if you're looking at some of these guys, I would much rather Darren Rizzi than those guys. I would much rather Darren Rizzi, Kubiak, and get a new DC than let McCarthy see what he can do, or let Shaw see what he can do, or let Nagy see what he can do. Like, these candidates are getting real rough real fast. And if Vrabel is basically guaranteed the Patriots job, and if Ben Johnson is basically guaranteed the Chicago job, then, then what? It's Aaron Glenn, John Gruden, and Darren Rizzi? I don't know. I mean, I think I'm not saying I'm 100% would go with Rizzi, but he'd be way up on my list. Way up on my list. And right now, I'm sure this will change as more information comes out. To finish that thought, if we do end up hiring a new offensive-minded coach, yes, it is obviously 100% going to be, does that coach want to move forward? Is he taking the job to move forward with Rattler? Is he taking the job to move forward with Carr? Or is he taking the job because he has a completely different vision? So that's a variable that could change this conversation quick. Where I sit right now, Right now, I think it makes the most sense for the franchise to move forward with Rattler. Again, depends on the contract, depends on all that stuff, but I think you've seen enough from him potential-wise to know that he can exist in the NFL. He can play at an average-ish level. Given, I think he has earned to see what he looks like with weapons, to see what he looks like with Chris Olave, with Rashid Shaheed, with Alvin Kamara, with the offensive line, another year in the system, whatever. And I think the benefit of him being on that 5th-round rookie contract is too much to pass up right now. The Saints right now it is imperative that the Saints trim the roster, get rid of bad contracts, get rid of aging players. This is the year to do it. For the last couple of years, the Saints, whether it was foolhardy or not, have been in a win-now mode. That is not the case anymore. They are no longer in a win-now mode because the core group of players that they were trying to win with are no longer good enough. Last year, we said it right here before the season. You can still win because if Demario Davis, Cam Jordan, Tyrann Mathieu, Marshawn Lattimore, Pete Werner, Carl Granderson, if those guys are good, then this defense can be top 10, and a top 10 defense wins in the NFL. Well, we know now. Demario Davis, Cam Jordan, Marshawn Lattimore, Tyrann Mathieu, they're not getting it done. So the core group of players that you were relying on, they don't exist anymore. There isn't a core group of players anymore. It was not too long ago, we were having conversations about, well, maybe Ryan Ramczyk comes back. We are a couple days away, I would assume, or a couple weeks away whenever the NFL calendar switches from Ryan Ramczyk retiring. So the Saints are not in a win-now mode anymore. If you're entering the non-win-now mode, you are inherently entering a rebuilding mode. Or you're entering a trim the hedges, get the contracts off the books, let the players retire, let certain players walk. I just saw a tweet of 13 players that contracts expire this year. And there was not very many of them on that list that you'd bring back. I'll tell you that much. So throw them in there. Throw the aging players in there. You got a lot of turnover. You might as well, if you're going to do it now, do it now. Last year, yeah, you wouldn't have done this because you're thinking, yeah, we can win. Last year, you believe in the defense. Last year, you believe in some of these players. Now, not the case. So the NFL and life is fluid. Things you thought last year are not things you think this year. You have to be able to pivot. You have to be able to look around, smell the roses, and realize what's going on. You got to be quick. And yeah, last year I absolutely thought that defense had legs left. Right now, I think we've seen 17 games enough to understand the defense doesn't have legs left. So let's retool, let's rebuild, let's get younger, let's get better contracts, and let's try and build this thing from the ground up before we can worry about winning again. And Spencer Rattler does kind of offer you an enormous domino to push over in that whole thing. Now, again, we'll end the video with this. This is completely tied to the decision with the head coach and the OC and all of that. If it's Rizzi and Kubiak, that's a whole different story than if it's Mike Vrabel and whoever else, which is a whole different story than if it's Aaron Glenn and whoever else. So, this is another thing that'll be fluid. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, let me know in the comments below what you think. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.